Welcome to SSI Meetup. Today we will be talking with PharmaLedger, the association for the healthcare industry. It's a real pleasure for me to have this opportunity because this is with two friends that collaborated with us on the self-sovereign identity book that we wrote with Drummond and many other people. And their presentation today is called A Digital Trust Ecosystem for Healthcare. So in the next slide, our two guests are Marco Cuomo, who is the Director for Products and Innovation at Novartis, and Daniel Fritz, who's an Executive Director of PharmaLedger. They both wrote a great chapter on the subject that you can read in detail about and in the self-sovereign identity book. And if we, on the next slide, let me review briefly what SSI Meetup is about. For those that know us already, you know it really well. It's all about empowering the global SSI and decentralized identity community to make all this information open and available for everyone across the world, and with a shared license CC by SA, which basically means that you can reuse this material, you can take this presentation, show it around meetups in the world or wherever you need it. You just need to give credit back to the source, which today is PharmaLedger with Daniel and Marco, and also to SSI Meetup, please. And you have, for all the other presentations that we've been doing over the years with all our guests, you have them there too. And you can reuse them. And actually, this has been used extensively, so we're quite happy about people taking advantage of this. So, Marco and Daniel, welcome so much, and looking forward to hear what progress you've made on PharmaLedger. And I'll be asking some questions so that we make this a little bit dynamic.
Great. Thanks very much, Alex, for the kind introduction. So, what we'd like to do today is basically walk you through the journey that we took and give some examples of the use cases or proofs of concept that we've applied the centralized identity, verifiable credentials, or the overall concept of self-sovereign to. So we're going to start with the problem, and we're specifically focusing here on healthcare. Marco and myself, we've been in the healthcare industry or in the pharmaceutical industry now for 20 years or so. And in that time, we've done many projects and seen on the business side, from the IT side, a lot of problems. These problems are sometimes solved internally in our companies, but in the bigger problems do not get solved through one company's efforts alone. It requires a joint and effort and a collaboration within basically creating an ecosystem. These problems, some of them, they're, I think, not really unique to the healthcare industry, but we talk about fragmented data, fragmented systems, organizational silos, functional silos even within organizations, because some of our organizations have over 100,000 employees. So it's not like everybody's on the same sheet of music. We're all patients, but the patients are not really the center of a lot of these solutions. Where data is coming from, how it's shared, this is always a question. Healthcare is a regulated industry, and the provenance of the data is in question. There's always middlemen. Security is an issue. And of course, in many countries, developing countries especially, counterfeit medicines are impacting health and lives and economies of the different countries. So these problems are ecosystem problems, and when they work together, then they basically create huge inefficiencies and a lack of trust. So the idea we had was to try to address that using a blockchain and identities, and we basically created a roadmap. This is literally a road, Marco.
Yeah,
you like it? This is
my favorite picture.
Yes. So
Still.
we did this back in 2018, and it's just to show you how we kind of looked at it. We looked at it from an external standpoint, knowing that blockchain is a team sport. It only works when we're joining forces, and this was basically around the PharmaLedger project, which is IMI. You see IMI, Innovative Medicines Initiative there, which is the project that we are going to talk to you about a little bit. consortium, actually, of 29 members that Novartis led. And we also, at the same time, had many internal activities. And a lot of these internal activities were focused around decentralized identity and verifiable credentials. So we're going to talk to you a little bit about third-party risk management, a POC that we did, and some other proofs of concept that we pursued, which helped us to understand the capabilities and limitations better as we proceeded in the project.
My turn?
Hey, you're up.
Perfect. So let's start with third-party risk management. This was one of the first projects we started internally. It had the goal that we also learn how to use DIDs and in general SSI. So first of all, third-party risk management, what is it? Every company has to onboard suppliers, especially big companies like, in this case, Novartis, but in general, pharma companies or other big companies. So just that you have a little feeling, Novartis or big companies, they have around, there's always a dispute, let's say 50,000 suppliers, and you have to manage these suppliers. They have to fulfill a lot of regulatory stuff, especially around environment, child work or labor work, and all these kind of things. It's also more and more public, right? That you want to know that when you buy a product, that the whole supply chain is fulfilling certain standards. So you don't want to support child work somewhere, right, when you buy a product. But to do that, a lot of pharma companies, they have sourcing policies. They need to control, let's say, the suppliers, that they fulfill their regulatory stuff, etc. So it's a lot of paperwork around that. And one of the biggest problem here is it takes a lot of time. Sometimes it can even lead to 3 months till a supplier is onboarded. But it's not only that. You have also to make reassessments of the supplier. So you have to control this data. You have to know when there are some corrective action plans in place, and so you have a lot of work to do. It's a lot of manual work today. You have to think about it. People sending around PDFs and Excel sheets with all this information. So this is the problem today. On the pharma side, it's huge administrative work, but on the supplier side, it's even more because they have to do all this onboarding for each company they are delivering their products. So they have to do the same work a lot of time. So how it's done today? Today there is an organization, Pharma Supply Chain Initiative. They try to standardize the questionnaires and audits in the areas of health, safety and environment, information security, labor rights, etc. That looks like, as you can see in the picture, it's basically an Excel sheet with a lot of questions. Just so you have a feeling, the questions for each of these bullet points here are between 300 and 400, or 500 even. So it's a lot of questions to answer. And some of these questions you have also to show evidence. You have to attach a PDF or other stuff. For certain situations, depends on the supplier, the location, the product supplied, they have also to deliver, or they have to be done by an external auditor, basically to fill in that Excel sheet. So it's a self-assessment is one thing, but then also it could be an auditor. So you can see a lot of work to do here. The solution we have in mind is based on verifiable credentials and DIDs. You see here our idea, the typical picture you may know. On the left side, we have the issuers, of course, trusted entities. This is basically a picture we said in the future. So we have on the left side, you see some organization who could be looked at trusted entities. For example, Pharma Supply Chain Initiative, the top one, but it could be the bank, universities, etc. for different things you can need here. For example, think about it. We also want to know whether all the people are trained, etc. In the middle, you have the supplier, basically the identity holder, and also having the verifiable credentials. And on the right side, you have the manufacturer. in this case, pharma companies. These pharma companies, they have normally today, if a supplier wants to be onboarded, to verify what I mentioned before, these questionnaires around labor work, etc. This is a manual process. Remember, PDF sending around, Excel sheet sending around via email. In the future, or in this prototype we did here with the third-party risk management, we wanted to fully automate that process and also reducing then the whole time with that. So for that, you need someone issuing the credentials. So that must be a trusted issuer. We need then, of course, a supplier supporting that. And on the other side, you need manufacturers, pharma companies to support that. We did a little prototype between Novartis, Bayer, and West. So 3 companies. West is a supplier, and Novartis and Bayer are 2 pharma companies. So we did that prototype. It was a productive pilot, means it was implemented in a productive environment, and we also used it to do a few productive onboardings. So the implementation which we did, you can see here, is basically the same picture, 2 pictures, but showing the same. On the left side, you see the simplified version. So we used Sovereign as the trusted fabric, as the backbone. And we have then implemented in the 3 companies the solution. So I just go through Novartis. So we have a so-called third-party risk management solution, which was integrated in our case with ServiceNow, which is a big ticketing tool for the companies. In this case, ServiceNow is not only used, but is also used for the onboarding process. And you need a wallet, and we call it here e-wallet. It was a cloud-based wallet to connect with the Sovereign. And so with this constellation, we were able that Novartis could onboard West as a supplier for a certain area based on a credential, which was a self-attestation. In this case, the supplier did it themselves, and Novartis was then approving that. So that was the construction we set up here. And then the same supplier could go to Bayer and has not to redo the whole questionnaire. It can just show the credential, and because the credential was also already approved by Novartis, that increased the trust for Bayer. In that, this was let's say a pilot to test that. On the right side, you see basically the same picture, a little bit more technical, with the wallets, with the different APIs between the DID resolver, etc. But it's basically the same, or the idea behind it.
What were the learnings? So maybe you will get into that, because I mean I understand that between Novartis and Bayer, I mean you did this experiment, right? Because I understand in reality, on average, you get certified once and that's it, and then maybe you have to renew your certification every couple of years. I mean, was this kind of in production that, or was it just like, okay, you guys, now accept this, and you had this agreement between Novartis and Bayer, well, you will accept this credential?
Yeah, maybe I missed to say that. So think about it, 40,000 suppliers, you have to manage them. It's every 2 or 3 years you have to redo or renew it, or if the supplier is delivering other products, new products, or has a new location, then you have to do certain other questionnaires. The benefit is only in the scale, right? The first time you have to do the questionnaire, whether it is at the end in an Excel sheet or in a verifiable credential. But then, if you have done it in a verifiable credential, you can reuse it very easy for other pharma companies to be onboarded. You could now also argue, you why not using the same Excel sheet? Very simple. Big organizations don't. This Excel sheet is for each pharma company. First of all, the Excel sheet looks a little bit different. The onboarding process is a little bit different, and they expect it in a little bit different way, right? And so you have to redo it again and again, and maybe not the same person, maybe there's another person responsible for that, etc. So that takes a long time. With the verifiable credential, the pharma company has to do, the supplier has to do it once, And the pharma company has the guarantee, basically, that is either signed by an auditor or by another pharma company, or it's a self-attestation, right? And can, based on that, make the decision automated whether they want more information or they are happy with that. So you can automate it, so you don't need a person to look into it, only in special situations, right? So this whole system makes only sense if you have enough participants. That means you need enough pharma companies and enough suppliers, because it only pays off if you really can reuse your credential as often as possible. So the idea would be really that in the future, you would have hundreds of pharma companies and thousands, if not 10,000s of suppliers. And then it would be, compared to today, a really automated system, which would save thousands of hours or even more, because you can really automate the most of the processes. Think about all the language problem you have if something is delivered from China. So anyway, this was a pilot. All the participants were very happy, but as usual in this kind of cases, it was very difficult to sell because everyone was busy with something else, and the system is working today. So in a positive way, I can say it's put on hold. But as PharmaLedger, we have a clear goal that we will bring that back, because we really believe in it. And this is not only for the pharma industry. You can apply that for all industries.
I think it's worth mentioning, I think in the Forbes top blockchain 50, that there were like maybe 2 or 3 different examples of this use case, TPRM, in different industries. So it is still relevant, and sooner or later, I think it's just a question of time.
Yeah, it will come.
Makes total sense.
Okay, here's another use case that we developed using decentralized identities and verifiable credentials. In this case, we had a couple different names for it. We called it, first it was a digital twin, but a lot of people argue about what a digital twin is. Maybe we call it a product digital dossier, or also micro-certification. So the idea here is that in the pharmaceutical industry, when you manufacture medicine, you basically have to document every single thing that goes into that medicine, including things like what temperature was the medicine shipped at, what raw materials went into it, were they released, were the machines used in the production calibrated, qualified, what systems were used, were the operators had the proper training. I mean, everything is, and rightly so, is controlled, because this is stuff that humans put into their bodies. And
a lot of paperwork.
It's a lot of paperwork. And in the end, it's a responsibility of one person to actually release this to the market to be used. And it's almost there's so much complexity that goes into the whole process that putting this responsibility in a manual way on one person is just not reasonable. So we did a proof of concept, and we tested this idea of a digital dossier for a product, and we successfully did it. It was basically just using a standard DID for the product, or for the operator, or for the material, or for the machine, and then collecting the information within all of those, and then putting them together in a hierarchical manner, which is then presented then in the end to a qualified person who's responsible for the release. And again, in this case, we have an option or an opportunity here to use automation or some algorithm or AI to ensure that there's no deviations done in the whole manufacturing process. So it can be done in a lot more efficiently way, and also then be scaled to other sites. So we think this will ultimately really digitally transform the way medicines are made in the future. And it's foundationally, it's using decentralized identity and verifiable credentials. I've been just by coincidence, I've been invited to Vienna in October to present the use of blockchain to the qualified person community. And this will be the core of that presentation, basically.
And the qualified person, that is the guy who has to take all the responsibility at the end.
Yeah.
He or she is personally liable for that.
That's right. So this oh, sorry, Alex, did you?
Yeah, how does I mean, with whom did you implement this? Or I mean, was it more conceptual, or was it did you do a similar pilot as you did for the other?
Actually, this was more conceptual. So we did it together with SIGPA, who's specializing in actually security inks but had a very strong digital innovation, and also Sverity is worth mentioning. We did a white paper on it, and of course then used a manufacturing scenario from Novartis as its thing. So it's it was just to prove the concept. Actually, a vendor who, the next step, we wanted to do it in a live environment. We didn't get any takers to do that from the industry side, but a solution provider did actually develop a product, trusted release audit chain that's called TRACK, based on that. So it's a proprietary solution, not kind of an open source one, which we're more leaning for. But it is also something which I think is still coming.
Great.
Mm-hmm. So we showed you a couple use cases, and now we'd like to switch over a little bit to what happened like next in our journey, which was the PharmaLedger project. This, as stated, 30-member project, 3 years. Under the Innovative Medicines Initiative, which is a joint undertaking between the European Union and the European Pharmaceutical Trade Association, EFPIA. And basically what we did in this project is to take some use cases in the area of supply chain, clinical trials, and health data, and develop them as demonstrators to prove the value of underpinning them with blockchain technology. And in parallel, we also were using decentralized identities and verifiable credentials in the use cases, in the development, and also the concept of self-sovereign data, self-sovereign applications, and self-sovereign identities in all of the use cases. The project also worked on awareness and education, so doing a lot of conferences and everything. We looked at the legal, regulatory, and data privacy aspects of it, and ultimately looked at what happens after the project ends in December 2022, and that was basically creating a post-project entity called the PharmaLedger Association, and I will return to that after Marco gives you a little bit about the scope and the technology architecture that we applied in the project.
Okay, so let me quickly go very quickly through the architecture principles we had in the PharmaLedger project. First of all, as Dan mentioned, it is not one use case or product we developed, so we have many. So from the very beginning, we said we need to stay flexible, means we have to make sure that we not define one blockchain technology and then everyone has to use it. We always said each use case, each project, they can use their own project blockchain technology, for example, Ethereum or Hyperledger or whatever. This is the basic layer or the foundation layer. When you look at the picture here on the bottom, it's the anchoring in the blockchain, as we call it. Then in the middle, we have the middleware, which is basically for the developers abstracting the blockchain specifics or technology. But basically what we do is we use the blockchain for anchoring the data, right? It's an enterprise solution. So for us, data are the key. We don't care so much about cryptocurrencies or NFTs, etc. If this is needed in a blockchain, in a product or use case, then the project has to pick a blockchain which supports their NFTs ideas or crypto or whatever they want to do. So we are focusing on the middleware, which we call OpenDSU, which stands for Open Data Sharing Unit. As I said, enterprise business needs, it's all about data. And when you look a little bit closer to the middleware is two things. It's first of all a middleware, but also an SDK for the developers. And as you know, everything depends on clear identities. You need to know who is the pharma company, who is logging in, etc., and so forth. So identities are very important and are covered by the OpenDSU framework. In this case, we have to be also very clear. We use an internal system for identities, which are very close to the standard with the DIDs, but we use an internal one because at the beginning we said, hey, we don't need other issues outside, so let's use it at least internally, but we are open for any other external identity providers. And on top, you see the application layer, the digital wallets, but at the end, it looks like a mobile app or a website or whatever it is, so the different application on top of it. So this is our layered architecture, very flexible. You can replace basically everything. You can even replace the middleware if you think you have a better solution for your use case. So the PharmaLedger is an umbrella, and we support different technology. The only requirement we have then, right, is it has to be open source, and we want to be vendor agnostic.
What about the middleware? I mean, who's contribute? I mean, because I mean, the way you just explained it, the middleware, I guess, is developed by different entities that are interested in this.
The middleware OpenDSU is basically based on another European project which started 8 years ago. It was called Blue Sky or something like that, and they already started with this idea of you need something off-chain storage, the anchoring, and all these kind of things. And during the PharmaLedger project, we were in contact, or basically the main development team was with PharmaLedger and helping to improve that framework and especially also optimize it, or optimize it for enterprise use with applications. So it's open source. It's completely open source. It's under the MIT license, and everyone can contribute.
And how does it connect? I mean, I understand it's the middleware that helps you to. I mean that supports all kind of different blockchains. Which blockchains are supported today, or?
Yes, it's a good question. There is an adapter. We call that an adapter. At the moment, we support Ethereum and Hyperledger Fabric. These are the two technologies we support. In fact, we have also, for the first use case, electronic product information, we use Ethereum, but we had, as part of the project, PharmaLedger project, we also have an implementation tested with Hyperledger Fabric. And of course, every other project who jumps in and says, we want to have another technology like Avalanche or whatever, then you have to create this adapter, and that's it, right?
Gotcha.
Okay. So we discussed in the PharmaLedger, we had about 7 use cases or products in different stages, right? The one which is here highlighted is the electronic product information, which we come later to it. But basically, along the value chain of a pharma company or pharmaceutical industry, we have in every area blockchain, and all of these, they need in one or the other way identities. Sometimes they need an identity for a pharma company, or for patients, or for healthcare professionals like nurses or doctors, or hospital, for this kind of things. And this is still a problem today. There is really no digital verifiable credential issuers which are fulfilling that. There's a lot of talking, and we come later to that, but really productive systems we couldn't find so far, which are fulfilling our needs. So from left to right, we have clinical trial recruiting. This is part of the development process, and close to that is the so-called clinical trial consent. So the one is finding the patients for a clinical trial, and the second one is to do the contract between the trial run and the investigator, is that called, and the patients. So that is called the consent. Then we move slightly into the supply chain area. So we have clinical supply chain, which is basically the supply chain for the clinical trials. And then we have finished good traceability, which is the commercial, the productive medicine, which are distributed. Then we have electronic product information. That's basically the eLeaflet. We come later to that. And part of electronic product information is also detecting false medicine or anti-counterfeiting, which will be part of EPI. And one very interesting use case is the medical device and personalized medicine. This is basically the place where we think, which then closes the loop with clinical trials, because that is collecting the data, not only, but one way, collecting the data from clinical trials, from patients, in a way that you can trace it back then from, or that you can have data lineage from the source, which would be the clinical trial, to the submission to the authorities for requesting approval for the product for the market. So with that, I hand over. Sorry.
Just before we go, I just want, I think it's
Did I miss something?
Well, no, EPI is highlighted here. And I think that it's just, we want to call out that EPI, or electronic product information, also called eLeaflet, it was then the strategy of the project then to take that use case as the most mature one and to use that as its first product in the PharmaLedger Association.
Yeah, the flagship, right?
Yeah, we basically realized that we can do as many slides as we want, but unless we have a real product that works, we're not going to get the real buy-in and support and the adoption that we need. So that was a strategy with the creation of the PharmaLedger Association. We did not, the original motto basically of PharmaLedger was blockchain-enabled healthcare. But what we realized is that it's maybe less about the technology and more about the ecosystem. A trust ecosystem underpinned with some cryptographic technology and, of course, digital, and for healthcare. So we've basically changed our whole focus, or our vision, towards a digital trust ecosystem. And the mission of the PLA, or PharmaLedger Association, is this global governance and operating model to carry on and exploit or scale the outputs of the PharmaLedger project. And I think we talked about it. We talked about the sizes and everything, but now, just for your information, that it's an association is a not-for-profit. It's based in Switzerland. It is it has patient-focused and it is led by its own members. It's open to any organizations that are part of the healthcare ecosystem. And actually, it's even open to individuals for the innovation lab that want to contribute in their own ways to projects. Marco mentioned technology agnostic, vendor agnostic, all open source, and we're funded through the membership fees, and are hoping that some of these network solutions, which is what blockchain's about, will grow or scale with their usage, and basically we will have a lot more members and more resources to realize the rest of the use cases that the PharmaLedger project delivered, and many more, because we think probably the best ones are yet to come. But one more use case, we focus on EPI now, and that is basically I'll give you kind of a functional overview here. So that leaflet or the insert, or in German Packungsbeilage, that is in the box in which you may or may not read. We think that there's a lot of benefit to have that in a digital format. Not only because it's easier to navigate, but that in the future we could have it in different languages. We could have audio over. We can include videos and things like this. Each medicine pack in most of the world has a matrix of data, a barcode basically on it, that includes the product number, the batch number, a serial number that uniquely identifies the medicine, and a expiry date. And basically using your smartphone, you can scan that data, that barcode, and then get the latest approved version of the leaflet or the product information from the manufacturer. And so that is the idea. You can imagine this is not a new idea. There's a lot of countries, maybe up to 50 now, that are looking at different ways to solve this. And if we don't do anything now, we may end up with 50 different ways to solve this in 50 different countries. What we think is that this approach enables to scale at a global level, and that adding countries or new products doesn't require adding additional system components or cost. It's just a matter of establishing the initial network and then starting to scale. But the scaling part cannot really be done manually. This is where we think that we will need to leverage decentralized identity in the future. And so we will, back to you, Marco.
Come to the next slide.
Yep.
Okay. I just give you a quick overview here, how it's very high level technically implemented. I start from right to left. On the right side, you see what we call the 2D matrix. Looks like a QR code, but it's not a QR code, it's a 2D matrix. And in this 2D matrix, you have the product number called GTIN, the serial number, expiry date, and other information like the batch. You see that here. So the patient is scanning it with the 2D matrix, is scanning it with the camera, the 2D matrix. With that information, we extract that out of this 2D matrix, and we put some other information to it, key derivation function and other things. We read then from the blockchain, basically we call that the resolver, because we have to find out with this information who is the owner and where to go to get the leaflet. And this information is on the blockchain, so to say, indirectly, and that is what we call the resolve on the blockchain. We read that then from the blockchain. With that information, we know where to go. We go then to the respective pharma company and read from there the leaflet. That is the first half. That is from left to right. And before that, the pharma company have to upload their leaflet into the blockchain. As I said, we have a middleware called data sharing units. We do not store the data on the blockchain. We do it off-chain. So in this case, when I say upload to the blockchain, it means it's storing somewhere and doing a link on the blockchain, a hash link. It's a bit more complicated, but for now. Important is that we want to make sure that this leaflet is also authorized from the health authority and, of course, also signed by the pharma company, right? So that the patient can be always sure to get the right information, because for some information in the eLeaflet, it is very critical that it's maybe 1,000 milligram or 100 milligram is a big difference. And so that's why it's very important that the patient is always sure to get the right thing. And the pharma companies have also to prove that they always are sending the right leaflet. So the solution we have at blockchain is decentralized. That means it's easy scalable. every new pharma company is not causing a problem. It's just another pharma company on the blockchain network. And as we're not storing the leaflet itself, only the hash link, it is really not heavy on the blockchain. There is no single point of failure because it's decentralized. If one pharma company is down, only these leaflets are not reachable anymore, but all others are reachable. Data privacy is a big topic, so we made sure that there is no information or minimal information going around, and so forth. So this is the technical solution here. And where do we need identities? First of all, the pharma companies need to be identifiable, so we need to know who is the pharma company. Second, and that's not implemented, that's planned for later, is that the health authority is also signing it, approving it with that, right? So we need identities for that. So when we now look at how we implemented it, or I have to be clear here, we wanted to implement it in this way, but that will come later. In the first step, we generate our own internal verifiable credential with our own internal DIDs because the issuers are yet not ready. So we have what we call here the EPI chain of trust, which starts from left to right with two examples. We work together with GS1, Global Standard 1. These are the people who created the standard for the barcode and the 2D matrix, and GLEIF. They are the issue. They have standardized the LEI. Oh, Dan, help me.
Legal Entity Identifier.
Right. Yeah. And they work with partners who are doing the whole process there. Basically, these GS1 member organization would be the country organization. There is also a global organization. They would then create a verifiable credential for the MAH. What?
Manufacturer. Marketing authorization holder.
Marketing authorization holder, which is the manufacturer, which is the pharma company. So just, or we call it MAH. So they would create the verifiable credential for an MAH. So then the MAH can say, hey, I can claim that I'm really Novartis and can prove it. Then they would create a verifiable credential for a fabric unit in the organization, and the fabric unit which is producing the medicine would then create a verifiable credential for each product, right? With the leaflet in it, etc. So that would be the idea. So that is what we call the EPI chain of trust. It's an example here. It's not implemented from GS1 and GLEIF from that point of view, but it's implemented from the MAH on, as I said, with self-created verifiable credentials. The same picture, a little bit nicer to show you the chain, how it is resolved, right? When the patient is scanning it and getting the leaflet, right? The leaflet is part of the product verifiable credential, or basically the hash link is there. Then, of course, you have to go back and figure it out. Is this really a valid one, right? So you go from the factor DID back to when you, maybe the legend, you see the blue boxes are the issuers, the green one are the subject, right? And the private key you see is this dark thing. And when you can see now here, there is a nice chain going back to the root of trust. In this case, would be the GS1 global organization, right? Where is the root of trust? And from there, everything starts. You could do the same with GLEIF, or as we did it for now with our internal, we have our internal, let's say, root of trust. So this shows nicely how that chain would work, and would also guarantee then the authenticity basically of the product, of the leaflet for the product which the user is scanning. So next one, right? Then now comes the real important picture, which I haven't seen for a while, to be honest.
I know how much you love this. No, wait,
okay.
don't. We started
spoil it,
with
don't spoil
the vision. That was the Trust Country vision at the end of the road, of the yellow brick road.
Yeah.
We end with the vision. So just for, if you ever wanted to know about the pharmaceutical supply chain, here you are. And when we explain what we're trying to do to supply chain executives, management, we use this slide, and it's the common vision that we've had in the project and across the different in the consortium. So just real quick, we have an end-to-end supply chain, meaning it's starting really, from the development of new products to the manufacturing of products to the distribution of products and to the patient. It's upstream, it's downstream. And what blockchain is doing is basically providing a common thin backbone that connects all of the different players in that supply chain with a single source of truth. That when connected and in one network and using a common thing enables a lot of other different use cases. You saw the one here in the middle, and where we talked about electronic product information, or a little bit to the left. We saw anti-counterfeiting. I mentioned cold chain or temperature monitoring and things like this. But if you look really to the left, what we realized is that in many use cases, including product authenticity and stuff, the identity of the product is the use case, or the identity of the device or the sensor that is gathering data on it, or the identity of the organization, or the individual, or ultimately the patient. And so we've kind of positioned here decentralized identities at as a prerequisite for these use cases then in the future to scale. We can manage when we have 5 companies doing it. We can do this manually, but in the vision is when this scales, and we're talking not about 5 or 100, but about thousands that are constantly changing and everything like that. We would have to have or DIDs and VCs become a key enabler or a critical prerequisite to make this happen. And it's going to happen. It's just a question of how much time does it take. If it's going to be a few years or a few decades. But this is the way we believe it's going to go, and we're doing our very best to accelerate the journey. So thanks very much for your attention here. And Alex, I think, thank you for the opportunity. If any more questions, then I'm sure Marco would be happy to answer them.
Thank you so much. I mean, it's really great to see this. I mean, I think now that I look back, I think we've been in touch since 2018, and it's amazing to see how much progress has been made. What is on your roadmap for, let's say, 2023, 24? But what are the things that you're hoping for to achieve in this time frame?
Let me start, and you can do the more visual picture. So the electronic product information, EFPIA, which we mentioned, is now really very, very close to go productive. So right now we are in the qualification process with 3-4 pharma companies. And if everything goes well with the qualification, we will have a qualified blockchain network for electronic product information out there. Qualified, it's a big deal for the people who are not in the pharma industry. It is a lot of regulation to fulfill, and I can also say a lot of paperwork, but it's for the patient, right? We have to make sure that everything is safe for the patient, so we do that. And that would mean then for this year, we would be out with EFPIA, just a few pharma companies, a few products, right? We have then to learn how that works and what are the implications we have when real users are using it. And the goal would be then in the next 6 months to 12 months to have another 10 pharma companies, and then later more and more exponentially growing, right? And so that we are basically, if a pharma company discuss how do we do digital leaflet, there's not anymore a question. If there is the solution out there, it's open source, it's open, it's not dominated by a single company or something like that. So it will be completely like, hey, sure, what else, right? We use that. And this is the goal. I think we need 1-2 years to go that route. If everything goes fine, right? We still need a little bit luck. But I think we have now everything built for that. So that is my little view.
That's on the product side,
Yeah.
but what we want to do is also establish an innovation capability within the association. We want to be able to test new applications, also of decentralized identities and verifiable credentials. The first use case that we want is going to be the finished goods traceability. It was one of the ones we did in the project, and this is a huge one. I mean, this is really about inventory management of stock. It's about addressing the problem of drug shortages in countries, and optimizing planning. So it's a big challenge, but we think we can do that. We'd also really like to start in the lab, innovation lab, with a clinical use case. While there's lots of benefits from a supply chain perspective, we think that's primarily about efficiency and speed. But when we talk about clinical, then we're talking about patients. We're talking about speeding innovative therapies and medicines to the market. And that, I think, has a much greater value for humankind in the future than optimizing the supply chain. So we'd like to also pursue that.
That sounds amazing. I think that sounds like a very great vision to have, because that can help a lot of people around the world. Thank you so much. Where can people reach out to you? What would you like to hear from people? If you can share that.
Yeah, PharmaLedger.org is our website. There's a newsletter that we have, which will be issued monthly if you'd like to stay abreast of what's going on. Or there's a contact formula there for reaching out, or even if you're interested in becoming a member. As I mentioned, membership in the association is open to all organizations in healthcare, because the problems will need all different perspectives and all different types of stakeholders. So if you're interested, we'd be happy to engage and see which ways we can collaborate.
Thank you so much, Marco and Daniel. It's a pleasure. It's also a pleasure after so many years to finally do this recording after we published the Self-7 Identity book, where we said we would do this. And after COVID, it took some time. And yeah, I look forward to see how you guys progress, and hopefully we'll have you back then to tell us the updates on the next milestones you've been reaching.
We'd be happy to do so.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks.